Hello, everybody. This is Elle LaShawn. Thank you so much for joining me here on my new channel, Focus on Fun. This is a continuation of my series to speak with fellow sisters who sit. That is pet sitting, house sitting, and they also travel solo all over the world. I welcome my special guest today, Miss Janice Cass. I will
Hello.
include
Hi.
I will include her bio down in the description box, but just to give you a little information, Janice is a creative person who loves to travel, meet new people, explore new places, and experience new things. And she studied management information system at the University of Georgia. And I am guessing from all the pink and green on your Facebook page in the 1908 that you're an AKA?
Yes, I am.
All right. Okay. So welcome, Miss Janice Cass. So
Thank you.
um, just give us a little brief intro about yourself, how you got started in pet sitting, how you got started in solo traveling, which one came first. Just tell us your story.
Okay, as I have in my bio, I'm a person that loves to explore and travel, and I've been doing that pretty much my whole adult life. We traveled a lot when I was a kid, of course, only in the United States. But when I went to college, it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. And I actually did my first solo trip out of the country when I was a senior in college. That was many, 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 many decades ago. I will not age myself, but it was over 20 years ago when I did that. I actually, we were fearless. I feel like the younger we are, the more fearless we are. But I've always loved to travel. So since that solo trip, I just continue in my adult life, traveling abroad. Not all the time by myself, but definitely I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see other countries and cultures. So I
Now,
continued to
now let me ask you a question. At that young age, you weren't afraid to just be out there in a whole different country, different people. You weren't afraid being away from family and friends that far away. You weren't afraid.
No, no. Like I said, I think the younger we are, the more fearless we are. I had to regain my muscle the older I got because we become more aware of the
Yeah,
world, the dangers of the world. When we're young, I feel like
very
that's the
true.
time to explore. It's like, hey, what I have to lose. I actually was going over to visit, um, again, being young, a boyfriend that was in the
Mhm.
military.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Well, we were actually engaged. We were actually engaged. After high school, he went into the military, and I went off to college. And we, remained in a relationship throughout my entire college career. And of course, I missed him dearly. Now, when he was in the States, we would visit each other, but he ended up getting deployed to Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And so I decided that I would go visit him my senior year in college as my senior trip to myself, after being able to make it through college. Again, this was back in the 90s.
Mhm.
It was a major feat. I think I was the first college graduate in my family at the time.
Mhm.
Um, so back then, flights were really, really cheap. And I saw a flight for like $250 round trip to London, England.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. Getting those
So
anymore. No more.
exactly. Exactly. So I booked the flight and then I called my mom. I called my mom, very excited, and told her, the plan that I had booked a flight and I was going over to see. She knew the fiance because we had went to high school together. She knew his family.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I told her that I was, going to go over to see him. This is an opportunity for me to travel, to see bits of the world. And I was surprised at her answer. I asked her, well, what do you think, Mom? Should I do this? My mom said to me, she said, when I was your age, 21, 22, she said, I was married, working 2 full-time jobs, and I had 4 kids. She said, so my daughter, go while you can. Before you start your life, you're about to get married. Before you start your life, go and see the world. So that was huge for me because this was back, like I said, in the early 90s. And my mom was that forward thinking that she encouraged me to go. So I hopped
Now,
on a plane.
was there a dad in the picture? Did he have anything to say?
My mom and dad were still married well, they remain married. But my dad, he was just easygoing. Whatever mom says was fine.
Okay. You know how
So
daddies are with their girls, so.
yeah, but he was fine. Oh, my dad, I get my adventurous spirit from my mom and my dad, but my dad also was very adventurous. He was a parachuter in the military, in the army.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow, that's cool.
yeah,
That's cool,
yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah, so he had traveled internationally through the army, right?
Mhm.
I believe he fought in Vietnam, right? So he was very adventurous, and I always, I looked through their eyes. My mom, she had never been out of the country, but she was very forward thinking and very adventurous. She would take us trips all across the United States. She would drive.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So that was the lens that I grew up looking through, like wanted to see more. It's got to be much more than this little small town that I grew up in. I always dreamed big. I knew I grew up in a very small town, but even at a young age, I said, I want to go to New York City. I want to live in New York. I want to live in New York. I want to be a fashion designer. Well, I didn't become a fashion designer, but I have visited New York several times. I thought I wanted to live in New York until I went one winter.
Yeah.
I'm a Southern girl, and yeah, no, me and
Mm,
Winter we don't get along well. So, um,
mm,
yeah, so
mm,
I was born and raised in the South, and I still currently live in the South. Now I will travel to places that have pretty rough winters, but I couldn't live there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
back to the story. I went to London, England, and when I got there, my fiance was not granted, what did they call it back then? Liberty? He was on the ship. He was in the
Leave,
Marine.
yeah. Leave to come out, yeah.
Okay. He could not get granted leave
Go
because
ashore. Mhm.
as jarheads do, he had did a jarhead thing and was involved in um, tr- a fight, I guess, like a brawl. So
Wow.
his leave was revoked. So I was there in London, England, alone. And I think I was there for maybe like a week and a half, 14,
Mhm.
14 days. So I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do? My flight is not coming back for a week and a half. So I just decided to tour England on my own. I actually stayed in hostels.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And yes, and I toured around the city. And I also had my very best friend that I went to high school with. She was another one. Back then, back in the 80s, the military was a real option, right? You either not most people went to college back then. They, got a
Right.
job or
Or went
they
into
went
the
into the
military.
military, and it was
Mhm.
only a few people that could go to college, because of cost, right?
Right, right.
So she did not go into the military, but her boyfriend went into the military, and they ended up in Germany. So I
Uh-huh.
contacted her and told her that I was in Europe and that I would like to come visit her and how could I get there. Well, I ended up taking a cross, I guess, country trip on the Euro train from London, England, over through Belgium, and I believe there was a
Mhm.
stop in France, and I ended up in Germany to visit her.
Because when you're already over there, it's pretty much effortless to get around to all those other different countries.
It
Not
is
like over, very
right.
effortless. Yeah.
They have transatlantic trains,
Train.
Eurostar.
Yeah.
I think back then it was called Thalys, but I
Mm-hmm.
know that Thalys merged with, I believe, Eurostar, and it takes
Okay.
you all over Europe, all the countries over in Europe. on the
Mm-hmm.
continent, over there. So I had to figure it out. I had never did it before. And it was quite the challenge because I took it from London over to France, which I think that goes like under the ocean. That train goes up under the ocean.
Oh, that
Again,
is
an
so
adventure of a lifetime.
that is
And
so
when I got,
cool.
I think I was like 22, 21 years old. So when I got to France or Belgium, I believe it was France, I had to switch trains
Mm-hmm.
yes, to go over to Germany via Belgium. Well, I did not speak anything other than English.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to communicate to understand what I needed to do, where I needed to go to switch trains was quite the challenge. And it struck me, again, this is why it's so important to travel. It struck me that the other countries, they speak several languages, including
Mm-hmm.
English. Whereas in
Mm-hmm.
America, we really only speak English fluently or required to. I mean, in high
Right.
school, I took Spanish, and then I think I
Mm-hmm.
took French for one quarter or semester, but I could not speak it fluently, right?
Right. Right.
So that was one thing that struck me. It's like, wow, other countries may be more advanced in that category as far as communication. They
Oh,
can
yeah.
understand me quite fine speaking English,
Uh-huh.
but I had a very hard time trying to understand what they were trying to tell me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, thank God, some nice people helped me to get on the right train over to Germany. And there I met my best friend from high school and her husband and their family. They had two small babies. And I spent the
Oh,
rest of my time there. And then I had to go back to London via the Euro train to catch my flight back.
yeah,
So,
wow, that was such a nice. Oh man, that's cool. That's cool.
yeah,
That is
so
cool.
I
And see,
had the travel bug.
with your yeah, and see, there's a lot of lessons you learned in that. Doing it on your own, getting out there, you had to figure it out. There's nobody there to really guide you. Y-
Yes.
Traveling gives you such an independence that it's just like a it's like a learn as you go kind of experience.
It,
And you
it
get to
definitely it definitely can be.
experience so many wonderful things, but you still got to figure out a lot of stuff on your own. Now,
Yes.
you say
Yes.
you're a pet sitter, so when did you get into pet sitting?
So, as I mentioned, I continue to travel internationally, sometimes with family, sometimes with friends, sometimes solo. You know what? Actually, I had not been out of the country solo since that trip. So that's where I was saying I had to rebuild that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, I continued to travel, taking my kids after I got married and had kids. I wanted them to see the world. So I would take them out of the country as well. And how I found out about pet sitting and house sitting is, I think, through how most of us did during the pandemic, 2020. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, and because I also like to travel on a budget, right? I try to find, because I want to go and see the world. I want to have these great experiences, but it can cost, quite a lot of money. So I
Mm-hmm.
always try to look for travel hacks and ways that I can travel on a budget. And that's probably what I was, looking up or interested in. And I came across Stephanie Perry's YouTube channel.
Yay. For those
And,
of you who don't know, Stephanie Perry is the queen of house sitting. Most of us got introduced to house sitting because of Stephanie Perry. She has a YouTube channel, Stephanie Perry. She has a house sitters toolkit, and she also is the founder of a house sitting school, the course that she offers also. So definitely check it out. I will put the links for all of that in the description below. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead, Jen.
yeah. So like most of us, she is so interesting and she's so intriguing. I watched incessantly. I would watch hours at a time, and
Mhm.
and back then in 2020, she was a budget traveler. she talked about budget traveling and traveling on a shoestring budget. I was like, hey, that's me. I need to know how I can do that. I was
Mhm.
already doing things like I believe in points. I travel like fly on points and miles and things like that. Same thing with hotels. I use points to stay at hotels, or I try to find. That was the only time I stayed in a hostel, but I try to find cheap alternatives to accommodations. And so all these things she was talking about, she was able to do on a budget through house and pet sitting. So that really piqued my interest, and I looked into it. I joined Trust. Well, no, it took me a couple of years to join Trusted House Sitter, right? I was telling all my friends about it. Nobody could understand the concept, but I got it right away. I was like, oh my God. So
We
I
get to
kept
travel.
I'm sorry?
We get to travel. That was it for us, right?
You get to travel on a budget. I just
Yes.
couldn't believe that I could travel and
That's
have
what
free
the,
accommodations
that's the
because
part that they don't get. That's the part that they don't get,
that
because everybody asks me, well, what does it pay? I'm like, I get
yes,
free accommodations. Do you know how
yes,
much money I am saving on hotels or
yes,
Airbnbs or having an apartment somewhere? Do you know how much money that saves? And I get to travel all over the place. I get to
correct.
pick where I go, how long I stay, when I go, when I leave. I get to pick all of that. That's the part they don't get. It
That's the
is like,
part they don't get
to
because,
me,
like you
it's
said,
pure freedom.
the first question is, how much does it
How much
pay? And
does
I'm
it
like,
pay?
it doesn't pay anything, but you get the price of the membership by just going for a week or a few days for
Yep,
accommodations to
yep.
stay for
Now,
free.
now,
I cannot.
if you start your own pet sitting business like Stephanie Perry has and some of the other women, even
Yes,
Diamond Crystal, if you start your own, then yes, you can start charging. But if you sign up for a platform like Trusted House Sitters, then no, they do
right.
not pay, but you get free accommodations.
You
And
get free accommodations. You get to go
sometimes
and
a lot comes with
travel.
that.
Mhm. You get to go and travel and not have the expense of accommodation. I had already figured out the travel hack for flying. I
Mhm.
use my American Express, Sky Mile, Delta Sky Mile for everything, and I
Mhm.
rack up on points. And I last year I traveled all year and did not pay for one flight, other than the taxes, which are like $5.
Right,
And I
right.
think I did like 4 or 5 trips last year because I used points. But I needed to figure out how to do that. I would use points for hotels, but it will only like maybe cover one night, right?
Yeah,
It was never enough to cover more than 1 or 2 nights. So
right.
this was
Right.
the perfect partner to airline miles.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. I was so excited, but other people just did not
They
get
don't
it.
get it. Yeah, they don't get it. Now, I hope you all
I,
heard that. I hope you all heard that. Her travel hack for flying is to use your miles from your credit card. I know not everybody has an American Express, but if you do, use that to pay for everything. It accumulates the points, and you use those points for your trips, for your flying. You go all over the world with
go
those
all over
points.
the world with the points. Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
points. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to every month we have expenses, right? You might as well use your credit card that's going to give you something in return and then
Mm-hmm.
use the same cash that you was going to use to pay whatever and pay the credit card. At least you get
Yes,
something in return, right?
exactly.
So
Exactly. Yep.
I've done that for decades. I opened up cards for my kids. They were kids, but I opened up
Mm-hmm.
cards for them and used their cards to
Mm-hmm.
accumulate points. So that's how I was able to travel with my kids as well. You
But now
know,
also, but now also for people who are listening, you got to understand it's not just pay, 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 and then pay a little bit on the card. You got to
no,
keep that card paid up.
yes,
Pay as
yes,
much as if you can pay the whole balance off that month, pay it off that month and start off clean slate. That is
yes,
how you keep your credit good.
right.
Okay,
So
that is how you keep your credit good. Okay.
yeah, so again, the key is the same money that you're going to use to pay. Say, for instance, your light bill is $50 and your gas bill is $50 and your water bill is $50. Well, instead of just paying it out of your checking account, $150, put that $150 on your credit card, and then take that same cash out of your checking account and pay it on the credit card. So you wiped out that debt, but you gained points.
Now, Janice, I have a question. I want to know where in the United States your bills are $50 each. I just want to know where that
They
is.
are
Well,
not.
I
They
have
are,
never heard that in
I
this.
use I use that example for
We should
math,
live
math simplicity, right? For
in.
me,
Yeah,
no. Listen, my
easy
light bill
example. There you
in
go.
the
Easy
summertime, it
example.
could be $500 a month, my light bill, right? Because I live in Georgia, it gets very, very hot, right? And I don't like cold, but I don't like to be overly hot either, right? So yes, no. Yeah, and in the winter it's just the opposite. My gas bill can get very, very high with the heat, right?
Mhm.
That was for uh simplicity of math. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so you've been doing pet sitting, and are you just strictly doing pet sitting, or are you still doing some solo travel in between that, or how is that working out for you?
Now when I solo travel, the first thing I do is look for a pet sit. I
That's
mean,
it.
it's a
Mhm.
no-brainer. I mean, why would
Yeah,
I pay for accommodations when I could get a pet sit and go
exactly.
and stay for free? I mean, it's just a it's a hat. It's a huge hat.
It's a huge hat. And like Stephanie said this morning, I don't know if you caught her videos
I did
live
not.
this morning. We were talking about you can use pet sitting to go visit expensive cities and states or even countries that you've been wanting to visit because you're
Yes,
saving on the accommodations. If there's
yes,
a huge event that you want to go to, let's say she said she went to Beyonce's concert out of the country somewhere. She could have done a pet sit then.
yes,
That would
yes.
save on the accommodations, and all you had to do was pay your fare to get there and something for food, and of course the ticket.
Absolutely. That is
Sure, that was not the
that was
wazoo, but
yes,
just
that was my
one example.
yes, and that's the beauty of it. You can use pen and house sitting to come up with the strategy of what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
so last year I wanted to go. I have a goal to visit every single state in the United States before I leave this earth, right? And I'm over
Okay.
halfway there. So
Wow.
now I pick six and play in states that I have not been to yet, or cities that I have been dying to go to. And I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
I have been dying to go to Chicago. I've never been. I've been to over 27 states in the United States, but I had never been to Chicago. I am not a cold weather girl. It's colder in Chicago longer than it is warmer, right? So
Mhm.
it had
Mhm.
to
I
be
heard
in the
about that.
summer months. So I had a goal last year because I signed up for Trusted House Sitters at the end of 2022. And
Mhm.
I, started out getting my feet wet locally. And then for 2023, I mapped out my goals of where I wanted to go by using house sitting. And Chicago was on the top of the list because I've always wanted to go.
Mhm.
So I used Trusted House Sitters to look for a sit in Chicago in December. I went in at the end of July, beginning of August. It was like a 8-day sit, and I had a ball in Chicago. Chicago lived up to everything I had ever imagined. I was in those Chicago streets every day. I had an absolute ball exploring everything Chicago has to offer. It is such a beautiful city. It has so much culture. There's so many things to do. You would never get bored. I was wore out because from morning to night, I was in those streets and I didn't pay a dime for accommodations. Now, can you imagine if I had stayed for a week in Chicago? That would have easily been maybe
200
$1,500.
something, 200 something a night for a hotel. All
Yes,
your meals,
yes,
transportation back and forth to whatever event or adventure you were doing that day.
yes.
That would have been
So
crazy.
yeah, so I only paid $11 for my flight because I used points. You pay for the taxes. Did I rent a car? Yes, I rented a car because I was a little further out. I wasn't in the city, but I was like 30 minutes away. So I did
Mhm.
rent a car, but I rented a car for like $200 for the whole week. So again, you
That's a
just
good
can't
deal right
beat.
there. That's a good deal right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
good deal. So for
Um,
those of you who are thinking about pet sitting, this is a motivation. This is your incentive. Especially if you have that travel bug. This is a great way to get your feet wet. Start pet sitting. It's almost summertime. This is a perfect time to sign up for house sitting. I will put my link in the description box so you can sign up. Definitely a good time to get started. And like Janice said, you could start locally in your city, in your state. You don't have to go across the country or to another state to start. You can start in your local area, do a weekend, do a week, whatever works for your schedule right now. And get those 5-star reviews, and then that'll start you on your way, and people will start seeing you, they'll start asking for you. But that's a way to get started. If you're
absolutely,
really interested in it, absolutely, if you want to do that, do it.
absolutely.
Now, see, I haven't been out of the country yet. I've had my passport now for 3 months, and I have been holding it. I went on a solo cruise thinking I was going to get all kinds of stamps, but no, they don't do that on the
But
cruise when you
you
go to these
actually can
different countries.
yes, LaShawn, you actually can get your stamps in the country that you visit off of a cruise. I have done that.
Where
Yes.
did you go? Because we didn't get it. I was going for a whole week. I didn't get one stamp. Nobody got stamps.
Last year, I took a cruise well, we stopped at 3 places, and 2 of the places were out of the country. One was in Turks and Caicos, and the other was Dominican Republic. And when
Mm,
you get off the ship, I don't know which cruise line you took, but with Carnival,
Norwegian.
they have like these little cities that they build right off the ship. So for people that don't want to actually go into the country, now I like to go into the country.
Mhm.
If I came there, I want to set foot outside of the village, the cruise
Uh-huh.
ship village.
Yeah.
However, in the cruise ship village, they have a kiosk, like a little station there, a little office there where you can go in and get your stamps. That's exactly what I
Okay.
did. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
remember that the next time
I
you take
know. Yes.
yes, take
Absolutely.
your passport off the ship with you, which I feel like you should anyway, because
Oh, I
anything
did.
can
Oh, I do.
happen.
Yeah. I took that with me everywhere.
Yes, yes, and
Every.
there's a little office there in the village, the little village that the cruise ship set up, right before you cross over into the country,
Yeah.
and you can get your stamps. I got both of my stamps, and I took cabs out into the country.
I have to remember that because most of my travel outside of the US has been on cruise ships.
Yeah.
My very first trip was our senior class trip in high school, and we got to go to Montego Bay, Jamaica.
Oh wow, nice.
Seniors, okay, 17, 18-year-olds. Oh, it was amazing. We
All
definitely
right.
went to Ocho Rios and we climbed down to River Falls. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I knew then that I wanted to do this. I just didn't know how. I didn't know any
Yeah.
travel hacks, didn't have any credit cards at the time. I was like, well, I can't afford it. So I'm thinking, like a lot of people, I'll just have to save and save and save and save and save. And then I'll get to do it later. But then as later came, I had a child, and then there was all kinds of other stuff. So
Yeah, where did you go to school that they take senior trips out of the country? That's nice.
I went to Benjamin Banneker Academic High School across from Howard University.
Okay, now that makes sense. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I grew up in the South, so yeah, no.
Yeah, I was only there.
And
I was
it
only
was many
there
decades.
for my senior year because my foster mom had passed, so I had to come back to the DC area, and that's where
Gotcha,
I ended up finishing
gotcha.
up high.
And also, I take that back. I do know that today, even in Georgia, the kids do go out of the country. This was just many decades ago for me, and that was not, I mean, we went to another city, we were doing great, right? So, and I'm just keeping it real. But now today they do. I mean, there are many
They
schools in
do.
Georgia
When I
that do go
talked
out of
to
the country.
When I talked to my classmates back in Florida, once we all caught back up again, and I told them we went to gym, they were like, "What?"
Yeah.
only took you a cruise to the Bahamas. How come you got to go to? Yeah, we got to go to Jamaica for a whole week. It was amazing. It was amazing.
I bet
Okay,
it
now
was.
so tell people how. Well, first, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's like, I see a lot of people in the Sisters Who Sit group who are signed up in the group, but who have not started pet sitting yet. What would be one piece of advice that you would tell them to give them that boost to just do it?
Uh, the number one piece of advice, start locally. Start in your own city to
I
get your
agree.
feet wet, to
I
get your
agree.
feet wet, to see if you like it, you know, to find out what you do like and what you don't like, and what would you do differently if you were out of the city, out of your state, out of your city, or even out of the country. What would you do differently? Start locally. I did 2 or 3 local sits in my own city before I started to branch out. I went to other states, and then I had a goal. I set goals. I'm a goal setter. My goal was by the end of 2023, I want to do an international sit, and I reached my goal. In December, I spent 2 weeks in Mexico City. Absolute,
Oh,
it was wonderful. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, as a solo traveler and also pet sitting internationally. So
Mm-hmm.
I say start locally. Get your 5-star reviews.
So now, is there a big difference in pet sitting here in the States as opposed to internationally?
Um, I would say, you know, for I think it's bigger. I feel like there are more opportunities,
Oh, definitely. Definitely
more
is.
opportunities out of the country. Um, you just have to know the different laws and regulations of the country that you're in, because we're not in the United States. So that for me,
Right.
that's important to know. I
That's
am a cat
huge to
sitter.
know.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a cat sitter. I've had cats all my life. I love cats. I was sitting for a cat, but I had an incident while I was there. It did not deter me. I will continue to pet sit internationally, but I had an incident that happened that I could not have planned for or even expect, where I may have needed to leave the country before the sit was over. And I needed to know what were the rules to take a pet outside, because I wasn't going to leave the pet behind.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the rules to take a pet out of the country? So that arose on my sit in Mexico, where there was very strong possibility that I may have needed to evacuate.
Wow.
Yeah, so I needed to know how, you know, what did I need to do to get this cat out with me if I needed to
Yeah.
go?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's all a part of pet sitting. Situations will come up. You got
right.
to figure it out.
Yeah.
Trusted House Sitters has a support chat that you
Mhm.
can talk to, but you can also join Facebook support groups like Sisters Who Sit, and Trusted House Sitters has a Facebook support group as well. You can join those groups. Definitely get on those groups and get support. You do not have to be out there doing this alone.
Right.
You do not have to be out there doing this alone. Okay, Jenna, so we have about 5 minutes. So any last points, pieces of advice, suggestions that you'd like to offer?
Um, the main thing, like I said, is to start locally, and also to just to get started. You know, be adventurous, and you never know where it may lead you. You mentioned that Stephanie and I think some other people have been able to parlay into paid sits, and just recently, I just did a paid sit locally. And this all stemmed back from the very first sit that I did, my very first sit locally. The homeowner reached out to me the day before her spring break trip was supposed to start, and her
Wow.
sitter had backed out on her. And she was willing, I had plans as well, but she was willing, you know, I like to help people.
Mhm.
My kids are adults, her kids are small. So, you know, I can readjust my plans.
Right, right,
She
yeah.
was willing to pay me to come and take care of her cats, so she could take her 2 little boys on their spring break trip. So, you just
Oh,
never know where these relate. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's also about relationship building, right?
yeah,
When you meet the
absolutely.
homeowner, yes. And I will say this, not even meeting the homeowner, but just providing great service, just
Service.
providing exceptional, going above and beyond. Because
Mm-hmm.
this particular homeowner, I have sat for her quite a few times on Trusted House Sitter, but her back was up against the wall. She was in a bind
Mm-hmm.
and she was willing to pay. I have never met her in person. I have never met this lady in person, but she trusted me enough. And that's exactly what she said. She said, I
Mm-hmm.
trust you and I know you. Is there any way you can help me? Absolutely. I can
That's a
readjust.
wonderful feeling. That's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? That's a wonderful feeling. Yeah, I've noticed that on several of my sits. They may start out where, like, I know like a couple of them have started out, they were going on vacation or they were doing a work trip and they needed to extend it, or either they came back for a couple of days and then had to go again because somebody was sick, a friend was terminally ill that they hadn't seen in a long time and they wanted to, spend some time with the friend, and they would ask me while they were on their vacation trip, can you
Right.
extend your stay? We can pay you or whatever. We can pay for your flight since you got to rearrange that, what have you.
Yes.
Those are things that can happen. I wouldn't say expect it,
No.
but those
Expect
are things
nothing.
that don't expect anything. Yeah, but those are things that can happen. I've had them pick me up from airports, train stations. I've had them leave refrigerator full of food. I'm talking about food that hasn't been touched because they're like, we want you to eat. We're just so grateful that you're here with our babies, because these people really see their pets as their children. And remember, a lot of them got their pets during COVID. So the pets are used to the parents being home all the time. You can go on these trips, you can go to these events and tour and all that, but at the end of the day, you still got to take care of that pet.
Right.
Read their profiles thoroughly, because they will tell you how long they want you or how long it's okay to leave the pet. Don't think you're going to go and feed the pet in the morning, you come back in the evening. No, you can't do that, especially not with a dog. And
Exactly.
trust me, these people know.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
neighbors across the street, neighbors next door. A lot of them have cameras at the front door, which they will tell you, and they're supposed to tell you. If the dog has a door that he can go out in the back, a lot of times they have a camera out in the back because they need to see what's going on with the pet. So,
Yes.
uh, so Janice,
Yeah.
I truly, truly thank you so, so much for coming on and talking with me. Technically, you're my third guest.
Okay,
One of
great.
You're my third guest, technically. I thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to send you free gift for coming on. You'll get it in the email. For those of you who are pet sitting or starting, please refer to the description box. I put a link in there to my pet sitting guide that I created. I created a pet sitting guide. Hold on. Here we go. My pet sitting. Where is it? Okay. Anyway. Okay. There we go.
There we go.
That's my pet sitting guide. It's available on Amazon. I will put the link in the description box. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Janice. And we will